The Shanghai Masters this year has felt less like a tennis tournament and more like a survival test. Players have battled not only each other, but the overwhelming force of nature itself, the kind of relentless, suffocating heat that drains strength, willpower, and precision with every passing minute. What began as a highly anticipated return of elite tennis to Asia has turned into a flashpoint, igniting conversations about player safety, fairness, and the urgent need for a global tennis heat policy. Environmental conditions, a furnace on court. Shanghai has been brutal this year. Temperatures have hovered steadily around 30 degrees Celsius, 86 degrees Fahrenheit. But it's not just the number that tells the story, it's the humidity. With moisture levels often soaring above 80%, the air itself feels thick, heavy, and unrelenting. Players have described it as suffocating, particularly during daytime matches where the court surface radiates additional heat. These aren't isolated weather spikes. They're consistent, oppressive conditions that have stretched on for days. Spectators can be seen fanning themselves restlessly, while even umpires and ball kids look fatigued. But for the players, it's an entirely different battlefield. Every serve, every sprint to the net, every extended rally feels like a test of endurance rather than skill. The combination of extreme humidity and prolonged exposure has made recovery between matches nearly impossible. By the time some players step back onto the court, they're already dehydrated, their muscles fatigued, and their reflexes dulled. In the locker rooms, ice towels, salt tablets, and electrolyte drinks are scattered like survival gear rather than sporting equipment. Player incidents. When bodies begin to break, it didn't take long for the toll to show. Jannik Sinner, the defending champion and one of the game's most disciplined athletes, shocked fans when he retired during his third-round match. The reason was simple yet alarming: severe cramping. For an athlete of his conditioning to be forced off the court mid-tournament was a sign that the heat was crossing dangerous lines. Then came Novak Djokovic, age 38, whose career has been defined by endurance, resilience, and an almost monastic devotion to fitness. Yet even Djokovic, one of the fittest men in the sport, visibly struggled. In one match, he vomited courtside, took multiple medical timeouts, and nearly collapsed at the end of a grueling three-set battle. His shirt clung to him, drenched, his breathing ragged. Yet somehow he advanced, surviving more through experience and mental toughness than physical comfort. Other players were not as fortunate. Terence Atmane, David Goffin, Tomas Machak, and Wu Yibing all either retired mid-match or showed visible signs of distress: cramped legs, trembling hands, and dizziness. For some, finishing matches became a question of willpower rather than competition. Spectators and commentators began to voice concerns. When professional athletes, known for pushing human endurance to its limits, are visibly breaking down, something deeper is wrong. Calls for change. Do you want someone to die out there? The scenes from Shanghai have sparked outrage and reflection in equal measure. Many players, coaches, and fans are now calling for the sport's governing bodies, the ATP, WTA, and local tournament organizers, to implement a unified heat rule. Currently, Grand Slam tournaments, such as the Australian Open and US Open, have defined extreme heat policies that trigger breaks or suspensions when the wet bulb globe temperature reaches certain thresholds. But outside of the slams, the rules are vague, inconsistent, and often left to local discretion. That inconsistency is what frustrates players the most. Holger Rune, one of the loudest voices in the debate, didn't mince words. "Do you want someone to die out there?" he asked reporters after barely surviving a match himself. His question wasn't rhetorical. It captured the growing unease across the sport. Rune and others argue that it's time for a standardized system, one that removes guesswork and protects players universally. Leaving decisions to individual supervisors or tournaments creates inequality. Some venues may suspend play, while others push through, creating unfair advantages or dangerous precedents. Who's surging despite the heat? Yet amid the chaos, some players are not just surviving, they're thriving. Novak Djokovic, despite heat exhaustion and a lingering leg injury, continues to defy logic. Then there are the up-and-coming qualifiers, players ranked lower but mentally sharper, who seem to be handling the conditions better. Many of them are used to playing in smaller, hotter venues with less support. Their adaptability and hunger often give them a psychological edge over top-seeded players accustomed to pristine conditions. And of course, the veterans, players who've spent years on tour, know how to manage pace, hydration, and recovery. They've learned that conserving energy is as crucial as winning points. For them, surviving the heat isn't just about endurance, it's about intelligence. Looking ahead, the WTA Finals in Riyadh. All eyes are now shifting toward the WTA Finals in Riyadh, scheduled for November 1st to 8th. Only the top 8 singles players and doubles teams qualify. And this year, the road to get there has been grueling. The Shanghai conditions have turned the final stretch of the season into a test of durability. Aryna Sabalenka, already qualified, has been dominant throughout the year. Known for her explosive power and relentless aggression, she thrives in intensity. Iga Swiatek, the cerebral counterpoint to Sabalenka's power, enters Riyadh as a major contender. Her meticulous preparation and ability to control points may give her an edge, especially if the conditions in Riyadh mirror those of Shanghai. For others still battling to qualify, every match in Asia counts. Finishing strong, even just surviving physically, could define their season. Momentum, confidence, and resilience have never mattered more. The finals format, round robin leading into semifinals, leaves no room for error. Fatigue, minor injuries, and mental exhaustion will play as large a role as tactics. The Shanghai Masters has reignited one of the sport's most pressing debates. Should tennis adopt a global, unified heat rule? The pros are clear. A unified rule would prioritize player safety, preventing heat-related illnesses such as cramping, dehydration, or even heat stroke. It would also promote consistency and transparency. Every player, from top seeds to qualifiers, would know exactly what environmental limits trigger breaks or suspensions. No more guessing, no more unequal conditions. Competitive fairness would improve too. Matches held at midday in hotter climates wouldn't disadvantage those unlucky enough to draw early time slots. The challenges. However, creating such a policy isn't simple. The first challenge is defining the rule. What temperature or humidity should trigger intervention? Do you measure air temperature, humidity, or the wet bulb globe temperature? A complex but accurate measure of heat stress on the human body? Then there's logistics. Suspending play affects TV schedules, global broadcasts, and ticketing. Rescheduling matches for cooler times might mean late-night finishes or tournament extensions. Another challenge is variation. No two tournaments are alike. Some are indoors with air conditioning, others are outdoor arenas with shade or retractable roofs. A single rule might not fit all. And finally, pushback from organizers is inevitable. Local committees may resist losing control over scheduling decisions, while sponsors and broadcasters may object to unpredictability. Still, these challenges pale in comparison to the risks players face. The verdict: tennis can't wait. After Shanghai, it's hard to argue against a heat rule. When multiple players collapse, when matches become survival contests, when fans and commentators are questioning safety, the system needs reform. What comes next? The coming weeks will be telling. Will the ATP and WTA act quickly to establish a universal policy? Early statements suggest consultations with medical experts and player councils are underway. Meanwhile, players are focusing on recovery. Those who endured the Shanghai Inferno, whether they advanced or retired, will need careful physical and mental resets before Riyadh. Hydration, rest, and mental conditioning will separate the contenders from the casualties. The crucible of modern tennis. This year's Shanghai Masters has been more than a tournament. It's been a mirror, reflecting the evolving relationship between sport and climate. As global temperatures rise, tennis, like every other outdoor discipline, must adapt or risk endangering its athletes. The question isn't whether heat will continue to affect play, it's whether the sport will act before tragedy forces change. If you believe tennis needs a global heat policy, hit like, share, and comment with your thoughts. What should trigger action? Temperature, humidity, or a scientific heat index?